What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Outcast Haven. Today we have a deck profile by our very own Robert. He finished top 10 in the core TCG online event. So we sat down and we covered the deck. We went through everything about it and just gave an explanation of how he ended up on the all gas version of Vegeks. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining us and enjoy. All right, guys, so here we go. We're going to talk about Robert's deck. I know, Robert, your deck is mega aggro. I think a lot of people play Vegeks with like a safety net, but you don't believe in safety nets. I know a lot of times you like counting your deck. So let's get into it and we'll break this thing down. So start with what's the first part of your deck?
All right, the first part of my deck, no surprise, is the free play engine, and so we'll just kind of highlight that first. Supreme Kai of Time, you see her in a lot of different decks. She's the MVP, just a free super combo, basically. You can never have enough Supreme Kai of Times. She's awesome. Next up, I'm going to call out the Time Agent Vegeta. No surprise here. I think folks forget the activate battle you can pay to in order to warp one of your opponent's cards with the energy of 3 or less. And it's activate battle, so you can use it on both turns. Super helpful. We'll talk about that a little bit in our matchups. Next up is Gotenk. Just a simple unison, the best unison because it's free. But don't forget that when you awaken, you need him on the board before you awaken side, activate main, burst in order to give him double strike. If you burst him in from the activate main, he won't get the double strike. So just try to play around that and make sure that he gets the double strike. And then lastly, Time Agent Trunks. He's the blocker. Super good. Self-awakener. Don't forget to take your life, especially, even if you awaken, you're going to have to go down to 6 anyway. So early on, if you burst them, remember to take the life. Also, think about comboing with him or blocking with him all the time because he's unique, so you can only have one of them out at a time. So if you were to just leave them there and not use them to block or not use them to combo, if you were to burst them again, you kind of lose that utility there. So no surprise on the core of the engine. So just wanted to highlight a few tips and tricks there.
Yeah, I think by this point now, if people don't know what the core engine of is, and it's that it's a 4 of everything, that'd be insane. I think sometimes I want to see somebody do a Vegeks deck profile with like 3 trunks just to flex and be like, yeah, I wanted to change it up a bit and go with a little bit of weird ratios. And like even one off, I think people would be like, you're insane. So that is obviously the core. And then the next part of the core deck is, I think this is kind of unchanged for most places. It's just a matter of ratios, right?
Yep. And so this is really the engine, is the Trunks Elite Descendant. He overwhelms for 3, and he's cost 1 energy, but it really lets you dig through the deck for the Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements, who let you burst an additional 5. And so, I'm talking to Blake, and in a lot of my matchups, I would potentially burst 20 cards within the first 2 rounds and really flood the board and get the engine going. So I didn't necessarily think that I would want to do this all the time, but it turns out that it's super powerful. And when Blake says that I was counting how many cards I had in my drop, it's so that I wouldn't mill myself out. If I can overwhelm turns 1 and 2 with Trunks Elite Descendant and get out Reluctant Reinforcements both turns, and then have the leader burst on top of that, that's 20 cards in 2 turns. And if I'm able to awaken, that's 25 cards. I'm running a 50 card deck, so I only have 36 cards in my deck. And if I'm going through 25 of them, you bet that my board is going to be absolutely flooded. It's such a strong play. And Reluctant Reinforcements also has Barrier to help you protect him with that. And so you're going to get a ton of swings, you're going to get a ton of cards on the board, and it's super powerful. Don't be scared to overwhelm kind of the first 2 turns and really just set up a winning board. It's hard to deal with everything that you're seeing on there, which is why, if you burst the Trunks, combo with them, block the leader swing, because you're going to get them again, especially if you burst another 10 cards on turn 2.
Well, I think that's an interesting fact that a lot of people miss, right? Is a lot of people think that you can run for the Trunks because you have to see it to get the Reluctant, but then people run 2 or 3 of the Reluctant. But I know for you, like you're trying to win turn 2 or the latest turn 3 most games to not give people a chance. And people forget that if turn 1 you put Trunks on, that's a 15K swing and gives you Reluctant next turn for a 20K swing. So then the next turn, when you overwhelm another Trunks, you get that 15K swing, the Reluctant from turn one, plus another Reluctant swing the turn after that on turn three. And then on top of that, after you swing with Reluctant, you can go get that Splintering Mind that we'll talk about in a little bit that people are running. And it becomes like this interesting thing where it's just more bodies as opposed to just about getting the Reluctant. It's about getting as many swings as possible as early and as fast.
Absolutely. And Reluctant is such a strong card again because it has barrier. It is a 20K. Round one, round two, it's hard to remove him. And if you have two, and we're going to talk about kind of the splintering mind and how that works, getting rid of two reluctant reinforcements is a lot harder than getting rid of just one. And so it kind of ensures the splintering mind play that we're going to talk about.
Because the energy, right? The energy is there. It makes more sense because then you spend one energy on the Trunks, and then if they somehow deal with Reluctant, turn two you can spend of your two energy, spend one on your Trunks to get your Reluctant, and then actually trigger your Reluctant if you need to get your Splintering for an Awakener or something else. So the next batch here I know is your self awakening package because one of the things that you do different I think than we originally looked at Vegeks, and I think originally people were like, well, it's so easy to fill your drop, you awaken 20 cards at drop. Your focus now, I don't remember the last time playing you with this deck that you counted your drop to see if you had 20 cards because that's how you were going to awaken. You're completely 100% all in on the awaken on for life train.
Absolutely. So in my six matchups, I did not awaken with 20 cards and drop in any of the matchups. The only time I had to count my drop was when I ran through my deck and had to make 20 cards, make sure I had 20 cards in my drop so that I didn't mill myself to death. So self awakeners are critical. So I mentioned trucks earlier. Don't forget that you can take the life, but I also play three Dark Power Black Mass Saiyans. They have utility, right? They stop some of the free plays that other folks are using the non-keyword skills. But more importantly, you can swing with them and take one life, you give 10,000 power. Oftentimes, it's just to get that last life to go from 5 to 4, especially if people are trying to keep me from not awakening. We also talked a little bit about the Black Messing Splintering Mind. He's super strong Self Awakener because if you swing with him, the auto is that you warp 2 of your life and you can one of your opponent's life. So not only am I self awakening, but I'm also warping one of your life. So honestly, I only do that probably once per turn or once per game because I want to self awaken. I use it more for that. Obviously, he's a finisher. If I have a reluctant reinforcement, my opponent can't go down to one life if I have 3 or more life. But most of the time, I will use it right when I get them just to get to 4 life in order to self awaken. Power Burst is my negate of choice. The reason for this is, again, Sparking 5, you can self awaken using that. But I think almost more importantly is you get to pull back Kai into your hand as another super combo. So, or other friend Dane on the team, he's like, Robert, how many Kais are you running in that deck? I'm like, well, 16, right? Just because you can Sparking Power Burst a couple and pull them into hand, and then you're bursting them all on the board. You'll always have a Kai.
Well, and people forget, I think, about the self awakening part of Power Burst. Like if someone's trying to stall you, or even the trade off, people always forget the whole. You get, unlike the rest of us commoners, right? Vegeks actually gets Sparking Negates turn one. So you just burst 5 and Sparking Negate. So if somebody somehow decides they're going to swing Double Striker, you just basically trade your Power Burst for a card from your drop potentially, and you end up having straight value because you didn't take a Double Striker, you didn't take a critical that lets you kind of do your awaken and your math on your turn and messes up their ability to kind of do anything.
Yeah, and it's great because not only does Power Burst pull back Kai, which I would say I do 80% of the time, but it can pull back Black Mass in. We'll also talk about Haru Haru. So there's a lot of utility and options that you can actually pull back. Round 2, I played Demigra, and he was swinging at my Black Mass Saiyan. And so he swung at my Black Mass Saiyan, and I actually power bursted a Black Mass Saiyan back into my hand because I figured I can't defend him for long, but if you're trying to kill him, chances are I should probably get another one on the board, right? And so it turns out he was trying to use a play auto on one of his demigros to get out the free gravy and poutine, but the Black Mass Saiyan just kept him off the board. And when he saw me power burst one back into my hand, he probably died a little bit on the inside. That goes to the super combo. The super combo is the set 11, bottom one, draw two. I've kind of read and heard about using Bibbidi or Temporal Rescue Trunks, the Sparking super combo. This one really works for me because, again, I'm trying to awaken turn two anyway. And so it becomes online once you're at four life. And my goal is to get to four life. And if I'm not at four life, something else has gone terribly wrong. And so this is the best card if you're going to be at four life, because if you're not at four life, it's actually a zero combo power, which is terrible. But if you're trying to get to four life, you might as well use the super combo in order to get the additional, which is super strong in Vegeks.
Well, I think a really good point about the difference between him and Bibity is you're playing a little more overwhelm heavy, and since you do overwhelm, you actually empty your drop. So there's potential that if the timing happens wrong or something weird goes on and you can't put cards back in your drop and your draw kind of gets out of sequence, or you don't draw the right cards off of something, you could actually end up with a 3K power super combo, which would be way worse, which is basically 0K. The difference is it's you once you get to four life, this thing's always on, and you never have to worry about the sequencing of like, oh, I have an overwhelm card in hand that I could win the game with, but I also have a Bibbidi in hand. So basically, my overwhelm card is going to get 3K super combo power versus 10K.
Yeah, and also another thing is that oftentimes because of the engine, if you think about cards like the Time Agent Vegeta or the Gotenks, they're going to be in your hand. And Vegeta is at least a 0 5K combo, but Gotenks is really a dead card. And so oftentimes I actually want to bottom it just so I know towards the end of my deck, well, there's a Gotenks there. If they're going to kill my Gotenks, I don't have to worry about it. I'll just burst them out. But also, you just kind of replace dead cards with better cards. So, um, super strong super combo. If you're playing straight gas like my deck, there's no downside of you have to be at four life. My goal is to be at four life anyway. So, very strong super combo.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people saw it as just a servant mechanic thing, like get the servant under there, or for some colors, it's about getting things back in deck because they have tutors and stuff. For you, it's funny because it totally is about the fact that you're going to get to the bottom of your deck and have to shuffle. So you can actually set up free plays where if you just remember, okay, earlier game, I bottomed a Vegeta and I bottomed a Goten. Well, I actually need to combo away stuff, or I let them kill things that I don't really care about. I'm just going to get it back for free anyway. And you know that, but your opponent doesn't know that. So them spending two swings to kill your Go tanks and you just going, no negates. It's not because you don't have a negate. It's because you're actually just letting it happen because you're looking at your deck going, okay, I have five cards left in my deck. I'm getting a Go Tanks for free next turn when I burst. So yeah, sure, I'll let them waste some swing on Go Tanks. And then you might actually even bait them into taking a couple swings at Go Tanks and then going, I'm going to save this big swing for leader, and you just hit them with a power burst, and they're like, why did they protect their Go Tank? So it's like there's some head gamey stuff to it where you can kind of mess with people. So
Absolutely. All right, now we're going to get to potentially different things with the tech. And so, first off, I'm going to talk about Koitsukai. A lot of people will say, hey, why do you run Koitsukai instead of the Majin Buu, which I had handy here, as my draw mechanic? One thing I would say is, again, going to the super combo, oftentimes I'll have a dead card in hand that's just not necessary. And so, bottoming two in order to draw two, to me, feels like I'm drawing two. But also, blue is pretty rampant. I think Topo's still running around, but there's a lot of those on play counter effects. And so, they're going to try to floodgate me so that I can't, bum rush them. In order to protect myself, I'll use Koitsukai. I will Koitsukai before my first attack. And so if you play the baby Gohan, you're going to have to drop two cards as well. If you play the Ready Rumble, you're going to have to drop two cards, Topo, et cetera, et cetera. And so oftentimes that'll at least make them think about whether or not they want to use the negate, or at least it'll dwindle their hand size. Sometimes if I have two Koitsukais and I don't have anything to do with my energy, screw it. I'll run both Koitsukais before my first swing. And it's like, yeah, if you want to negate me, you're going to have to drop four cards. So that's going to be super fun. So it's just a very strong card. I think ability more so than the Majin Buu of just discarding a card and drawing two. They cost the same amount of energy. They both work from drop. I just think Koitsukai is the better play here.
well, I think people forget that like Majin Buu is an end of turn thing, and Koitsukai is an in turn thing, and then on top of that, like they're both 0 5Ks, so there's no difference in that. It's not like Koitsukai is a 110. And to your point, like what we even talked about with the super combo is you're trying to churn through your deck. Like you want to cycle your deck at least once. And when you're doing that, you can put things back in your deck. If you didn't put a Gotenks in with the super combo, you can put a Gotenks in with Koitsukai and keep pushing that stuff up in your deck to where you can burst it and get it back out. And it just allows for like some setup plays in a deck where, again, unlike the rest of us, you get to play by a different set of rules where you don't have to worry about milling yourself and losing. And you're not counting your deck going, okay, I have 5 cards left, I'm going to lose. You're going, okay, I have 5 cards left. 3 of these are going to be free plays. Sweet, let's do this.
Yeah, and another thing is, we talked about Trunks Elite Descendant early on, and how it's fantastic to have kind of tool first 2 turns. After turn 2, you're not going to overwhelm anymore, because if you do that, you're going to blow yourself out. Like, there's no doubt about it. So if you do have a Trunks Elite Descendant, you're either going to bottom it, you're going to combo with it, or you're going to charge it for energy. So using again the Koitsukai or the super combo, you lose nothing by bottoming the Trunks Elite Descendant in order to draw your other cards. So yeah, it's a 0 for 5K combo, but that's the most that you're going to lose when you do things like this, like Koitsukai or the super combo. Next up, I guess this isn't super techy, but it's 4 of the double strikers. You'll see that it's 2 Champas and 2 hidden Iskais. Why is that, Blake? It's because these are the ones that I had in foil. Just important to note that if you have the Iskai, you have to declare that that card is getting double strike, because I guess it's an option not to. Also, I will go to Haru Haru, which is another 1 cost double striker. Love having Haru Haru power bursting her back into my hand, especially the end of turn 2, early turn 3, in order to apply the extra pressure. For 1 cost, getting a 15K double strike, just gross, right? And you almost always have Gotenks on board one way or another, and so just gross. Probably my favorite in set 11. Lastly, and I'm not sure how I feel about this, we're going to talk about kind of things that I would change later. I did run 3 Goku Man on a Mission. Another card that you would use to bottom, because after turn 3, unless you're going for the finish, you wouldn't necessarily overwhelm because you would kill yourself. But just a 20K free double strike crit, I don't think anybody would argue that it's a bad card. I would say I didn't necessarily use it to its full potential, and so I would rather have the Trunks Elite Descendant, an extra reluctant reinforcement, instead of Man on a Mission. So kind of noodling that as we get ready for December.
All right, so let's run through your matchups real quick. I know you had some kind of fringe matchups or rogue deck matchups, and then you had some definitely mainstream deck matchups. So let's talk about your matchups kind of by round real quick, and we'll just go through some short little tech things and some tricks to winning certain matchups. So what would you play round 1?
Round 1, I played Gotenks, which I think is starting to die down in popularity. I think people know how to play around it now, but still pretty strong if you're not quite sure how to deal with it. But I would say that the MVP of the Gotenks deck is Time Aging Vegeta. Again, we talked about it earlier with the Activate Battle, paying 2, you get to warp one of their cards. The cards that you're trying to warp here are Goku, so that they can't kind of get all the that they need to flood the board. Gotenkses, and then also Zarbons, right? Because they're going to use their Unison, make it revenge, and have a blocker. You're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to way so that you can't stop me. Hardest thing is also that you always want to use your Kais whenever you can, especially if they're on the field, because Dormant will clear them. But at the end of the day, the matchup is use Time Aging Vegeta to get rid of troublesome cards and swing like there's no tomorrow, and get them out of there as quick as you can.
Well, and I think in this matchup, right, like in a lot of matchups, you can use Kai's offensively, Black Mass Sand, and things like that. But do you find that you probably dial back some of that stuff, getting it on the board and trying to get it off of there defensively in that matchup, as opposed to some of your other matchups where you're kind of grinding at them? You're trying to use more from hand for combo power and things like that in this matchup?
For sure. Again, because Dormant is going to clear most of the sort of drops. So you may play a Haru Haru if they've already dormanted as your second swing, just to get a double strike swing in. But if you have Kais on the board and they don't dormant you, if you have a double strike Champa, just use your Kais and your Champa while you can, because chances are they're trying to get a dormant. If they don't have a dormant in hand, or they're trying to require it with the Master Roshi, the game really drags on because they're tormenting you every turn. So using the resources that you have, like Kai's, when you can, is the key to success, as opposed to just losing it for them.
So would you play round 2?
Round 2, I played a Demigod deck, so not going to go too much into that. I think Vegeks just the better black leader. I will say, hey, I mentioned earlier he was trying to cheat out some plays, and the Dark Power Black Mass hand kind of held him at bay. But that was about the nerf.
Yeah, Vegeks kind of has a plus matchup into pretty much every rogue deck in the format because it just goes too fast and too wide. So what was round three?
Round three was a reboot Gohan, and with Gohan, it's really did I hard mull um, a negate to hand like Power Burst? Did I burst out all of my Kais? And so this was actually really hectic. My kid kicked the router right before the round started, and that kind of threw me on tilt. I forgot to draw my card. I forgot to draw after my burst and basically lost in 3 minutes. So that was kind of frustrating. But my boy Dane also playing with me, kind of talked me off a cliff. And shout out to Dane for keeping my head on straight. Much appreciated.
And then round four.
Round four was another janky deck. It was Surge Coup with the Gogeta package, and again, just not fast enough to keep up with Vegeks, and so really just flooded the board and took him down. Koitsugai kept moving the table.
Yeah, that was a funny matchup. I remember messaging you and saying we were keeping up with everybody every round because our boy Bergie was playing at locals, Dane and Robert were in the tournament, and I wasn't able to play in this tournament. I didn't get in, so I was just trying to keep up with everybody and see what's going on in their rounds. And as everybody said, what was your matchup? And Robert goes, I played Surge Coup. I was like, interesting. And he goes, with the Gogeta package. I was like, mega interesting. How'd that go? And Robert's like, yeah, I won pretty fast. And I don't think that's a knock on the innovation of the other guy. I think it's the fact that Vegeks is just scary.
Yeah, especially when it's all gas. You know, even tier one decks. I still think Vegeks is tier one super strong in the meta. So unless you're super buttoned up, Vegeks is gonna.
And then round five.
Round five, I had my reboot Gohan Revenge. So this turn, I did start with my Power Burst in order to kind of fend off uh, Gohan Rebooted. Also, again, kind of using the Trunks Elite Descendant and Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements and getting the extra burst. If you burst a Kai or you burst a Trunks, super, super helpful. Just, kind of taking away the one swing or getting the combo power. And just very strong. Again, can't say enough about Power Burst, being able to sparking the Power Burst and pull back another Kai just from more combo power. Uh, Super helpful. I do think that, with Gohan versus Vegeks, it's probably a 50-50 matchup depending on that you get. But I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage when I'm playing Gohan.
Yeah, it's kind of like RNG at its peak, right? It's like just what did you burst versus did they draw the feat versus did you get a negate, and it can be a little chaotic. I think Gohan's probably the one matchup that really makes Power Burst the best negate for this deck. Some people think Protector of the People is good or Max Power. I think those are fine. I think the issue is when you run in a best of one, you're going to potentially run a Gohan. So if you're in a best of one, there's nothing better going to Gohan than sparking negates because your options are let them swing and potentially go feet into triple crit, or just hit him with the sparking and take one life for it. So
Yeah, and for sure the guys from Minnesota, Dane Reichenbach, he played a Gohan and he lost to Gohan. Our Dane Russell, he also played a Gohan and couldn't get a negate. And I played Gohan twice, right? So I want to say probably 4 or 5 decks were in the top 16 running reboot. And but I do think that deck's a good matchup in that it's 50-50 versus Gohan. It's not necessarily a deck that I'm terrified to play.
and then your last matchup of the day.
Last matchup of the day was Soul Striker, right? And so it's a good blue deck. Dot deck, is that what you like to say, Mike?
Yeah, good blue deck. That's how you build a deck.
Yeah. And again, here I would say the Koitsukai is super helpful. There are, I believe, back-to-back turns where I ran the Koitsukai. Again, you got to run it before you swing and punish them so that, yeah, you can play the baby. And I'm going to have to bottom a card to swing, but you're going to have to discard 2 cards to play it as well as play it. So, even if I were to swing a couple times, we're still kind of on even ground there. And so I think against blue is where Koitsukai really, really shines. But again, it works against Topo and things like that as well. If you're playing against green, it works against Charismatic Frieza as well. So they'll have to noodle if they want to pop one of your battle cards, and so it's a super good deterrent. I think the thing that I have to remember using Koitsukai is like you use it early in the turn as opposed to like thinking like if you think that they have a counterplay or a negate that brings a battle card into play, you just want to use Koitsukai first and you'll figure everything else out later. But the worst thing is the feeling of I could have played a Koitsukai, but I didn't, and they got out the Charismatic Frieza and popped my battle card, or I swung with my leader for some reason, and they got the negate out without punishing them, and you just look at the Koitsukai in your drop and feel sad, right? So just use it early and often.
Cool. So those were the matchups, and let's move on, and we'll go ahead and talk about some potential future deck tech choices and changes.
All right, I'm super excited about this, right? I mentioned a little bit earlier that Man on a Mission didn't necessarily work for me. And again, I don't think that it's a bad card, but when I'm on turn two and my options are kind of using a Man on a Mission or potentially getting the Trunks Elite Descendant and pulling up another Reluctant Reinforcement, the way I explained it to the team was I think I'm always going to pick the Reluctant Reinforcement Trunks Elite Descendant combo over Man on a Mission. And that's just for the sustained uh, uh, board control state, right? Like I'm going to have the reluctant enforcement on the board for the next turn, and potentially further out. Hopefully not, but it stays on the board. And also, I think a lot of people are prepping for Man on a Mission, and there's a lot of blockers out there, and so ideally you save it until the end. But there's another thing that I want to talk about of kind of how do I burst with Vegeks. On turn two, typically I would want to play my Overwhelm before I use my Leader Burst. And the reason for that is turn one, I would burst and I Trunks Elite Descendant, overwhelming my cards to my Warp. The Reluctant Reinforcements, you get to burst five again, so you kind of reload your drop. So on turn two, with my drop there, I would want to do my second Overwhelm without my Leader Burst, so that then I would be able to Leader Burst and kind of reload my drop again for the Sparking Negate or what have you. So overwhelming immediately turn two with Son Goku Man on a Mission kind of defeats the sneakiness of it all, because they're going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to let everything else go and I'm going to block Man on a Mission. And so it kind of went against the game plan. So what's my potential solve for it? This is probably no surprise, but I do have my hands on kind of Demigra from Dropbox 6, which super powerful card. When he comes into play, he gets to warp one of your opponent's battle cards, and then when he swings, he gets to choose an opponent's card from hand and discard it. And he's a 30k, and he has Dark Overrun, which isn't a problem for us because 90%, 95% black cards, and he stays on the board. So just, I'm super excited about this play because I think if I'm comparing it to a Trunks Elite Descendant Reluctant Reinforcement combo, I think that this card is just as good between the I get one less swing on the turn coming in, but I get to pop a battle card so I could potentially pop your blocker. The 30k is really, really big and scary. And then also the mild hand control, because I'm trying to be real aggro. I'm going to take a lot of you're going to get a lot of cards from life. This can help mitigate that a little bit. So really excited for this swap. I think it's a great turn two play, and really gives the opponent something to think about.
Well, I think even beyond that, I think the thing that makes him more insane, right, is the fact that a lot of things now, like the Zarbons and stuff like that, are recursion from the drop. So him warping a card makes him even better because now Zarbon goes to the warp, which means they no longer have access to that Zarbon that they might have hard mulligan for, thinking, okay, Vegeks is coming hard, they're coming fast. I need to block with Zarbon and control their hand. I'm just going to recur him every turn to save me one swing. And then you warp him, and now that Zarbon that they thought they had kind of game plan for, that Zarbon is gone. It's not accessible to them anymore. And a lot of these decks don't run four Zarbons, they run two or three. So the accessibility of another Zarbon by turn three is pretty low mathematically for them to hunt it in their deck and try to get their hands on it. So it like makes that card just like even a notch better because it takes away the access to the blocker that recurs.
Absolutely, and I think to that point, that's what makes Time Agent Vegeta even better. It's an activate battle. You pay two, but you're warping that card. So to your point about, hey, they're going to recur Zarbon, not today, son. It's going straight to your warp with that ability and also with this ability. So just love that. And we didn't talk about it earlier, but I am running a 50 card deck currently because of consistency. I think with the addition of the Draft Box 6 Demigra, I might actually add one more Furthering Destruction Champa and one East Supreme Kai. And the reason for that is there's so much synergy with the double strike when you put it on a 30k, right? So when I swing at you, it's going to be a 40k double strike, and that's something that Vegeks doesn't currently have because the strongest battle card in my deck is 20,000. If I can get Go Tanks to 5 markers and -4, he's 25k. But Demigra's so big, and that I run Champas, you're going to do whatever you can to try to stop it. And so having more Champas there, I think, will be helpful. So I'm probably going to run 52 cards, and the only change that I'm going to do is swap Man on a Mission to the Dropbox's Demigra, and then I'm going to throw in 2 more double strike cards just to use with Demigra because he's gross.
All right. Well, that is Vegeks All Gas Edition. I think that's the only way to describe this thing. We've been being punished by it, but at the same time, it's a good training ground. As somebody who plays Sin and wants to play 6 or 7 turns, it's a different experience to have to tech into it. And I know Robert and I are getting ready and raring to go because we have a December invitation only tournament that we got our invites to, and we're pumped and ready to get testing for it. So if we're going to see you out there, just forget that Robert said anything about changing tech, and just know that I'm not doing anything. I'm just playing the same deck. It's exactly what was in my deck profile. I would never change anything. That's not me game playing. That's just totally us, like being consistent.
And Blake did not tell me this before we started filming, so thanks, Blake. Appreciate it.
Yep, that's all I can do for it. So, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us, checking out the deck. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Have a great one, guys.